Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Looks like with almost no marketing budget whatsoever, Ghost of Tsushima pretty much destroyed the Last of Us 2 sales records, and we'll get into all that. You know, it's been interesting to watch this kind of morph into a battle between titles that PlayStation just double wins anyway, but it's been fun to watch. Now, the Metacritic, it all started with Metacritic, with The Last of Us Part 2 having 133,000 reviews. Probably the most reviewed game in history on Metacritic. I feel pretty safe in saying that. Maybe Grand Theft Auto 5 might be up there, but in the period of time, there's no way that anything was closer. After this happened, Metacritic put in a new rule because, well, they didn't want too many people sharing their opinion on the game, apparently. Now, The Last of Us Part 2 score has crept up to a 5.5, while the journalist score remains at a near perfect 94 out of 100. Both scores are baloney, all right? The game is not a 5. Well, no, it's not a 5. You can't even objectively say it's a 5. Even if you hated the story, there are other things that factor into the overall score, I think. The game is probably a 6 or a 7. Almost certainly, which means the 94 is absurdly overrated, and the user score is definitely artificially being brought down. However, I reported last week on the Ghost of Tsushima interesting little issue where it was getting a lot of 0 and 1 out of 10s from people that had only ever rated one other game. That other game, they gave a 10 out of 10. What was that game? Well, it was The Last of Us 2. So, salty Last of Us 2 fanboys and girls review brigaded Ghost of Tsushima and tried to bring their score down. Now, brave game journalists seem to not want to report on this, even though I showed beyond a shadow of a doubt that that's what was happening. I had maybe 20 examples. But the user score still remains extremely high on Ghost of Tsushima at a 9.2 out of 10. And that's even with the efforts of salty Last of Us 2 fans trying to drag the score down. Now, I am not sure that Ghost of Tsushima is a 9.2 out of 10. I think that the middle section does lag a little bit. There are some annoying glitches in the game that you just didn't have in The Last of Us 2, to be honest with you. Small, but at times they can be immersion breaking. And, you know, I would say, I've talked before, I'm still at an 8.5 for the game. 8 to 9, I would say. Definitely not higher than a 9, just because of the bugs and some of the pacing. But it's still an amazing game. And people are reviewing it as such. You can see Dave Thier saying, editor's pick, Ghost of Tsushima is the game of the generation. I've been making my way north slowly for days now. What was at first an imminent threat has subsided to one that sits in the background. The Mongols have invaded the island of Tsushima, and I'm the only one that can stop them. Sure, but for now they seem content to wait in their camps and let me take my time as I chase foxes and birds through golden forests and sweeping grass fields, reflecting on my journey in a shade of a red maple tree. Sometimes I end 6 men in seconds as I see them passing by. Then off to see what this little golden bird wants to tell me. This is the world of Ghost of Tsushima, slow, occasionally brutal, and contemplative, and easy. It is fitting that it comes now at the end of the last major exclusive before the PS5 and the last major AAA release before we start getting into cross-generation territory, because it feels like a little encapsulation of the entire last generation of gaming. It's not the best game of a generation. It is not the best game of a generation, no. But when it comes to AAA console gaming, it seems to encapsulate the past 7 years better than any other game. More so than being an open world game, I would call Tsushima a map game. The game plops you down in an open map like any number of games have done before, and it populates that map with icons that you can go check off, liberate an outpost, honor a shrine, climb a knot tower to get a new charm. Collect upgrade materials for your equipment along the way, grow stronger, encounter occasional story. It does so much of this beautifully well. This is perhaps the prettiest game I've ever played, making staggering use of color and light to produce an endless stream of social media ready screenshots that you never quite get used to. Even after a dozen hours, the game knows this and leans in. One of the open world activities is simply to lay down your sword and observe the world around you and write a sort of lame haiku. The combat is engaging and exciting on normal difficulty. You'll soon find yourself hopelessly overpowered next to your hapless Mongol enemies, and the game transitions to being less about how you can end the enemies, but more about how you want to do it. You can rush in with perfect parries and attempt to make them look silly and go down in one shot, or you can slow time and nail the headshot after headshot with your half bow, or you can go nuts with bombs or throwing weapons and fell an entire crowd in seconds. You can just go ahead and sneak around if you like to. That's really one of the things that I'm really enjoying about the game. You can play it exactly how you want. And it's not the first game to do it like this, but in fact, Red Dead Redemption, rewarded that with your honor system. If you're a good or a bad guy, the decisions you make in the game. Now, they didn't really often come up, but it did have a little bit of that. He finishes the article. Dave Thier, by the way, on Forbes says, "I am more glad than I expected to have a game like Ghost of Tsushima. Rather than giving us innovation, Sucker Punch has given us care and craft with the things we already know. It's a comforting thing to have. There's a moment when my country is still grappling with its failure to contain the Kuf, and when the future seems less predictable than it was before. It strikes a delicate balance of predictable, able to live in both back and front of my minds as I play it. It is the encapsulation of the entire console generation, and it's come at just the right time." I agree. I'm not done with it yet, but I'm having a blast. I do find myself kind of just off in my own little world at times. But now let's take a look at how it's selling. Well, as of yesterday, PlayStation says Ghost of Tsushima is sold out in Japan. Sucker Punch title has exceeded expectations. In a statement posted on Twitter, PlayStation Japan said the production of additional Ghost of Tsushima stock was underway and urged fans to consider purchasing digital. The PS4 exclusive released last week and is only the third Western game developed to receive a perfect 40 out of 40 score from Japan's Famitsu magazine. The others were Grand Theft Auto 5 and Elder Scrolls. Last year, another PlayStation exclusive, Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, enjoyed the biggest launch for new IP in Japan in a console generation, beating the likes of Judgment as Sekiro and Bloodborne. No sales data has been released for Japan this week, but the Sucker Punch title has enjoyed a strong start in the UK, where Tsushima comfortably reached #1 in the box sales chart. According to GFK, data published by GI.biz, the action game didn't come close to matching last month's Last of Us Part 2. However, its box sales were 7% higher than last year's PS4 IP Days Gone, which is a more comparable product. Okay. Do I think that Ghost of Tsushima is going to outsell The Last of Us 2? No. I mean, the marketing budget for The Last of Us 2 was gigantic. I saw nonstop commercials for it on TV, too, on ESPN and all the mainstream programming. I saw ads for it on streaming platforms. I just saw it everywhere. You know how many ads I've seen for Ghost of Tsushima? Let me count. Oh yeah, zero. But what about if we look at total sales numbers in Japan? Because, it's a small win here, I think. Ghost of Tsushima has had a phenomenal launch in Japan, outpacing other Western developed PlayStation Studio titles. Ghost of Tsushima, 213,000. The next closest, The Last of Us Part 2, we'll call that 179,000. So it defeated it by nearly 20%. Now, can you make the connection as to why Ghost of Tsushima sold really well in Japan? Yeah, it's not that difficult to do. but it's good to see them showing up. By the way, this is box copy sales, and the game is facing shortages. So they go on to say, Benji Sales goes on to say, this was with facing such severe shortages that Sony Japan actually had to make a public statement about it. Will be interesting to watch legs, but it's incredible to see the opening launch. You see a lot of the people reply. Funny how American people are saying it's not equal to the samurai epics of the past, yet Japanese magazine gave it a perfect score and is selling out in Japan. Well, because Japan doesn't care. Japan doesn't care about offending people. They care about, you know, that I'm the most akin. Like if I had to live anywhere else, it'd probably be Japan. The arcades, plus I'd be a literal giant there. You can see, here's the sales numbers for top 10. I mean, it even outpaced Origami Mario or whatever, the Nintendo title. It's no joke. So I'm happy for the early success. I'm hoping that more people give the game a try because I think it's really amazing. It's just a great way to relax. It's different than The Last of Us 2. Both, you can enjoy both games. I'm certain that a ton of people do. And it's really a nice thing to have. You know, two giant PlayStation exclusives basically a month apart from each other, keeping us all busy if you happen to be a PlayStation fan. Otherwise, well, there's always next year for Xbox. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.